All right, I will go ahead and get. Are we streaming? Okay, we're good. I'll go ahead and get started. I'm sure some of you will trickle in as we get rolling. So this is a session on VI. I kind of do this as a semi. It's not really serious, but what I've come to learn as I've done more and more in network automation and just Linux system administration in general is that VI is like the common baseband. It's always there, and so it's good to have a few basic skills when you don't have access to a fancy UI editor. So I put the session together, so hopefully you enjoy it as much as I enjoy teaching it, as well as going through it. So we'll talk about, as an introduction, we'll talk about why do we use VI at all? Why is it important? And then we'll do a lot of hands-on. So I won't be in a lot of slides, but I do have a terminal open, and I have a virtual keyboard that I'll pop out when I'm typing so that you can see the keystrokes, so you can actually see that I'm typing what I'm saying I'm typing. And we'll go through some common commands. We'll learn about some very handy defaults inside of VI, so things that you should set in your configuration file that are handy to have. We'll talk about how you navigate, how you move across lines and between characters, how to search and how to find and replace a few things. We'll talk about modes of operation, which I think is probably the most complex thing about Vim that people don't always understand. And then if we have time, we'll get into cutting, copying, and pasting, so your standard operations of how we move text across a file, and then we will conclude. So before I get started, these are two tutorials in Cisco U that I have put together. These QR codes will take you to those tutorials. The top one is an introduction to Vim. So if you've never used VI or Vim at all, this is a great way to get started. We worked through some sample text and how to find or how to navigate and some modes of operation. The second one, intermediate VI, will actually teach you a lot more about how to use VI as your daily editor. So when I'm doing a lot of my edits for Cisco U tutorials, I write exclusively in VI. And so I have show you how to use windows and buffers and tabs and terminal windows and things. So it's a little bit more advanced, but you can actually see that all of the power that was there inside of VS Code or JetBrains or whatever your other editor was is there inside of VI all along. So why would we ever consider using VI? It's everywhere. So if you run Linux, if you run Mac OS, if you run Windows, WSL, Windows Subsystem for Linux, it's part of your baseband installation package. So if you install any of those operating systems, you will have VI available. And that includes, if you use WSL2, you're actually getting a full operating system installed as a virtual machine on your Windows system. So it's there, because it's a full operating system, there's nothing that's been removed. It is there by default. Despite what other people may have said and some of the jokes, VI is simple enough to learn for basic editing. So even if you just need to modify a few files or move things around, delete a few things, and I'll talk about some use cases, some very quick and easy shortcuts to speed up a few things for you, it is simple enough to learn for very basic editing. The other argument is that a lot of people like to use Nano or Pico. The problem with Nano or Pico is that they often require a separate installation. I have to do an apt-get or a DNF install. That's not always a problem, but if you work in secure environments or you have very strict installation or SC Linux rules that prevent the installation of those packages, you can't always use that, especially if it's a jump host or a bastion or something that you use as a jumping off point into something else in the network. So we can't always use those. Same thing with remote extensions. So VS Code is a very popular one where you can do a remote editor. You can click the two little arrows and connect to a system via SSH. Same thing with JetBrains, so like PyCharm or the GoCharm or whatever they use, IntelliJ. Those require a remote download. So when I connect to something with VS Code's remote extension, it reaches out, runs a script, downloads the extension on the far end machine so that we can connect and do that tunneling. Again, because there's an installation required and a download required, that isn't always possible if you have secure conditions. And then the other things that are, you know, if you want to impress your friends, your fingers stay on the keyboard. There's no pointing and clicking in the mouse. And finally, the last thing, if you use Linux and you need to modify your sudoers file to be able to do sudo use, you know, command, you have to use vi sudo. There is no other way to modify that because of the permissions that are ingrained inside the Linux kernel. So you have to at least know vi enough to add users to sudo if you don't have a script for that already. So we'll go ahead and get started. This is where the fun begins. So when you run, if you just launch a terminal window and type vim, you'll get a window that has, you know, the version and written by Brown Molinar, rest in peace, and a few other things, you know, how to get help and things like that. But there are some defaults that make VI very handy, and there's not many, but these are the things that I set out of the box by default before I get started. So I'm a dark terminal window user. I like things black or dark blue. There's some amongst us, Hank, that use a white terminal window. But for those that use the dark terminal window, we have to, if you do :set BG equals dark, that will change the color scheme so it brings it out a little bit. It's easier to read on dark terminals, especially in defaults where you have like dark blues and things that are very hard to read. Set BG equals dark will automatically change that so it's meant for dark terminals. The other thing, set number, relative number. So by default, I'll show you my VI window. This is just something I typed out, but there's no line numbers. That's very difficult to read. You can see that down here I have this 16:26. That means I'm on line 16, character 26, but it's nice to have line numbers over on the side. Set number and relative number do two things, and you can use them individually, or you can use them together. If I do set number, and I'll show you that. Let me pop out the keyboard here. So : that enters the command mode, so I've entered that down there. Set number, and hit enter. I now have line numbers over here on the side. So I can scroll through like a typical editor, I have my numbers there. Let me go ahead and do set no number, so you can see the difference. If I do set relative number, which is the second command, you can see that my numbers are slightly different. They go from 0 up and down. Why is that important? Well, in VI, we can navigate by skipping lines up and down, but you don't want to sit there and go 1, 2, 3, oh, I've got to skip 4 lines. So now, as I move my cursor up, you can see my 0 line change. So now I have the lines that are up and down, so I know if I need to skip down 5 lines, I can do 5 down and be okay. Really cool. If we combine these two, if we make set number relative number, so I'm going to do set number on top of that, you see how now line 10 popped out. My current line will always be denoted on the side, so I know I'm on line 10, and then the lines up and down will shift as I move. So you can see I'll move line 11, 12, 13, 14, and the numbers change there. Personal preference, I like to use them both so I know what line I'm on and how many up and down, but you can set that as you need to for your operation. So that right there is a huge benefit. The two others that I like to set are set cursor column and set HL search. Set cursor column, how many folks have worked with YAML files, with you're doing Ansible or things that you have to have certain number of spaces in line? How many times you sit there and you've got to count how many spaces in? Cursor column is a really handy tool that allows me to build a cursor, and it gives a line of a vertical highlighted line of where my cursor is at on there, so I can make sure all my indentation is perfect. HL search says highlight all search results in the current buffer. So I will set that. We won't see that till later on, but I'm going to set both of these things. So let's do set cursor column. You can see now I've got a line there. So now I can see as I move through my lines where that indent tracks. So now, like I said, if I'm working in YAML or Python, where I need to have some very specific indentation, I have that availability to see that right out of the box. And I'll set HL search. That'll come up here in a second. I think it's buffering from something else I did earlier, but we'll see that in a second. What that says is anytime I do a search result, it'll highlight. Now the important part here is you don't have to set these every single time. If you do a .vimrc file, remove the colons, but do set bg equals dark, set number, relative number, and put that in the vimrc file. Every time you launch VI, those defaults will be set. So any default or anything that you like to use, you can set in that RC file, and it will stay there every time you launch it. So you don't have to do this over and over again. So really handy tricks to set the defaults. Okay, navigation. This is the other thing that people have problems with. And just as an FYI, I know that you all are taking these screenshots. That's great. If you ping me, I can give you a copy of the PDF of the presentation, and then I also have a cheat sheet at the very end that's kind of handy that covers the most commonly used things. So basic navigation, arrow keys are acceptable. So I know a lot of people, VI purists, you're going to use the H, J, K, and L and move left and right. It gets really, if you're good with that, that's fine, but you don't have to be. Arrow keys are acceptable. You can use, in fact, if you watched when I was navigating, I was just using arrow keys up, down, left, and right to move across all of my lines. I can use numbers to augment the amount of movement. And what I mean by that is if I want to move 5 letters over, I can do 5 and then hit the right arrow key and it will skip me 5 characters over. If I say 4 down, it will move my cursor down 4 lines. So you can augment the amount of movement by saying a number and then an action. A couple of other handy tricks. Within a line, the 0, if you're in normal mode and you hit 0, it'll take you back to the beginning of the line. If you type a $, it will move you to the end of the line. So really handy to move back and forth, especially because VI doesn't like, if I'm too far over to the right and try to go up and it's not as far over, and I'll show you, you can't get there. B and W also have a capital B and capital W. That's to move forward is W. B is backward. That will move by word boundaries. So by spaces, essentially. The reason I have the capitals is normally with the lowercase, like a period or a comma is treated as a word. If you use the capital, the large B, large W, then you skip over those as well. It counts those as part of the word, not an individual word. The handiest thing that I'll show, colon number. So if I type a colon and then type 23, that will move me down to line 23. The most handy thing for this is supposing you're on a Linux workstation and you do an SSH. Maybe it's in a lab. And it says, hey, the host key has changed. I know the IP address, I know the host key, but it's different now because you made a new VM or whatever. You want to remove it. Well, you've got to go into the SSH known keys and go to the right line, but it gives you that line in the error. So if you type colon, line number, it will move you down to that line. You can delete that line immediately and then save it, and you've saved a lot of time that way. Colon W will write. Colon Q will exit. You can combine those two. Colon WQ will write and then save. You can also do colon X, which will do the same thing, but I like to separate it. Write, because I'm an old network engineer, write the config, and then quit. So we'll show you this here. All right, so let me pop out the keyboard. So you can see that I'm just moving by arrow keys. You can see it's highlighted there. Now say I want to move up 5 lines. I'm going to type 5, arrow, and I moved up 5 lines. So that's where that relative number comes in handy. I can say I need to go up to the import RE. That's up 7 lines. I can do 7 up. I'm right there at that line. Now you noticed it moved me to the very end because my cursor was further over than where that line was, so it moved me to the very end of that line. Say I needed to move to the beginning of that line. I type 0, and it moves me to the beginning. If I wanted to go to the end, Shift 4 moves me back to the end. So there's my handy navigation. Now I'll go down a couple of lines here, and I'll show you what I mean by the word, and back. So I'm going to type a lowercase w. You can see it's moving to the spaces. Now watch what happens when I hit it again and where my cursor goes. It moved to the ampersand. If I hit it again, it'll move over, or sorry, the parenthesis, sorry. When I hit it again, it moved to the V. That's because it considers that parenthesis a word. Now, if I go back, I'm going to use Shift W. You see how it skipped over the parenthesis and the comma and moved to the next space. So that's where those capitals come in handy. If I want to move quickly across punctuation, I would use the capitals. And likewise, I go back, move to white space versus move to individual characters. I think that's, finally, I don't have the number set, but I'm on line 4, 10 lines down. Let's move to line 14. I'll do :14. Moves me right to line 14 as indicated by there on the side. So if, like I said, with those SSH keys, it's usually IP address and then some long RSA key, : line number, enter, DD for delete the line, and you've got it covered, or you've got that removed. And I'll talk about that in another slide. Clear so far? Awesome? Okay. I won't write or save this because I need this document open for some other stuff. Okay. Modes of operation. This is the other really confusing part about VI. When you open VI, you're operating in normal mode. Normal mode means I can navigate. I can use my arrow keys. I can use letter keys to move around my document. But I'm not editing anything. I'm not adding anything to the document. I'm not taking it away. That's called normal mode. And there's nothing that is shown on the screen. In order for us to add text to a document, I need to enter insert mode. And that's denoted by I. If you hit I on your keyboard, you'll see insert on the lower left-hand corner. That allows you to insert text. Now, there's a couple of different ways you can get there. You can use A for append. So insert will be over the character. Append is after. Change just removes the word. They all get to insert mode, but if it does not say insert over on the far left side, you can't add any text. The other mode that people will see is visual. And visual, think of this as a text-based cursor. If I type little v, I have to be in normal mode. All these happen from normal mode. In normal mode, if I type a lowercase v, you'll see visual on the lower left-hand side, and that allows you to use your arrow keys to highlight words or lines or characters or whatever you need to. And you'll see it will cover it up with a cursor. From there, we can select that text for copy, paste, delete, all of our normal functions. That's handy. The other visual mode is capital V, visual line mode. This does not allow you to select individual characters. You're selecting them in line blocks. So if I have a paragraph of text, I can select that paragraph just all the way down to the end, and it will just highlight those lines. It will also say visual line on the side, so there's no question whether I'm in visual or visual line. Like I said, that's for cut and copy actions. To get out of those modes and get back to normal, I'm just going to hit escape. So we just hit the ESC key, which is why it's kind of a pain to use VI on an iPad, because the keyboard, the physical keyboard has no escape key. You have to map that. So I'll show you what I mean here. Right now we're in normal mode. I've hit escape a few times. There's nothing over on the side except for my commands. Say I want to go to the end of this line. There we go. And I want to insert something. I want to add some text. I hit I. You can see that it shows to insert there. And you can see that my character's over the period, which means that anything I type will go in between the L and the period. So just be aware of that. So I'm going to move over one. And I'm just going to type, this is insert mode. So to get out of that, I will hit escape. Insert goes away. I'm now back to normal mode, and I can do all of my commands like go back to the beginning, move up and down lines, those kinds of things. I'll show visual mode. I'm just going to hit lowercase v. You see visual there on the side. As I move my cursor, you can see it's highlighting those, just like clicking and dragging a mouse. And I can move up and down, but if I don't need all of that, I can just highlight individual characters. So there's going to be a lot of flexibility to copy very small segments of text if I wanted to. going to hit escape to get out of there. Capital V is that visual line mode. You can see now it says visual line. So there's no mistaking those modes. Visual line is different than visual. You can see that if I move left and right, it doesn't actually change. It doesn't change the highlight of that line. But as I move down, it's going to select the entire line regardless of where my cursor is. So if I'm cutting large segment or large functions in Python, or whether I'm cutting large segments of text or some playbook, an individual task in an Ansible playbook, this is what I generally use. And to be honest, most of the time I'm cutting in visual line. It's just how most of my editing goes. But both are handy. There is another one called Visual Block. I'm not going to get into that. I do cover that in the intermediate VI tutorial if you're interested. All right. One of let's see, I got about 10 minutes, perfect. Okay, so the other really big thing with VI is finding and replacing text. How do we find it? How do we replace it? This is where it gets a little, probably the strangest thing we'll cover today. If I want to search for text inside of a file with VI, slash, and then whatever I want to search for. It doesn't matter how I input it, as long as you're going to get a match there. Now, what's important is that by default, searching in VI is case sensitive. So if I have something that's hello with a capital H versus a lowercase h, if I don't enter it the right way, it won't be found. I can use the \C to make it insensitive, so I can chain that together. Once I have my search string, it'll highlight because I have HL search enabled. If I type lowercase n, it'll move where my cursor is down to the bottom, so I'm going to do a top-down search. If I do capital N, it goes bottom-up search. So if I'm halfway through, I can change my search directions. It will, if I go all the way to the bottom, it will skip to the top, and it will say that we've reached the end of the file, starting again from the top. So it will keep wrapping around. It's just the direction of the search there. So let me demonstrate that real quick. So here, I'm back in normal mode, slash, and let's type this. So you can see that it has highlighted all of my instances of the word this. But if I do this with a capital T, it doesn't find anything. That's that case sensitivity. You can disable that by setting the flag in the vimrc, but by default, it is case sensitive. Now, if I do a \C, say case insensitive, I've now found all of them regardless of how I've typed it. And because we have the highlight search enabled, you see all of those. So let's go ahead and hit enter. I'm at the very bottom. I'm on the last instance of that word. So I'm going to hit N to take me to the top. It moved to line 14. It said search hit the bottom of that buffer, returning to the top. So I can hit N and it will skip to the next one, N to skip to the next one, and so forth. Sorry, you didn't have the keyboard up. That was probably confusing. I'll show you. N to go through. And again, it'll keep rotating through as many times as I hit N. If I want to go backwards from the bottom up, capital N, you can see it's moving backwards, and then it will say search hit top, continuing from the bottom. So depending on where your cursor is, you may want to search, or maybe you only want instances above or below a certain point. That's where you'll use this. But it's that slash search string /C if you want it case insensitive. Okay, this is the weirdest part about VI. If I want to find and replace, you start adding a bunch of things together. So if you're familiar with Linux, there's the sed command where I do sed, slash something, whatever, replace it. In Linux, it's :s. So :s slash what I want to search for and what I want to replace it with. This will replace that with the first instance on your current line. So in my example, I had this twice in a line. It will only replace the first one and then stop. If I append it, so if I add a G at the end, so that slash and then a G, that makes it all instances in a line. So that will change both instances in that line there. It will not look at any other lines above or below. in order to get every single instance across the entire file, instead of :s, I use %s. That will replace everything globally. And then the other thing that I like to do is, I don't really use the search case insensitive because I know what I'm replacing, but a lot of times I will add after the /g, I will add a /c because that will say, it'll ask me to confirm every single change. So if I'm doing something globally across the entire file, I want to know what I'm replacing before we replace it. Same thing that VS Code does, where it goes, you want to replace this one? Yes, yes, yes. Or I can replace them all and throw everything out to the wind. So you can combine the /i and the /c and all those things together to build your own adventure. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the %s to show you that everything works, how it works globally. So let's do this. %s. Pull the keyboard out. Now what I want to change, I'm just going to change the hello. You can see that because I have the highlight search enabled, all of my instances of hello were highlighted by default, which is nice. I want to change it with the capital H, hello. But I also want it to ask me every single time I want to change. So I add that /c at the end, and I'll hit enter. So it highlights it. Do you want to replace this instance? Yes, no, and there's a bunch of other things that I can do, but I want to hit yes. But it's going to ask me every single time. Oh, you know what? I didn't do it. There's the other question there. So you can see that it only hit the first instance on each line. This is where those tags become very important. I forgot this. So I wanted it global, or I wanted it across the entire document, but I did not do it globally across the line. Now /g/c and hit enter. Come on. %s, hello, hello, G. Okay, and then it changed them. So again, we have to combine those characters to get them to work together. The last thing, I'll leave this up. I won't get to it, or I can show a couple of them. I won't get to show them all. Cutting, copying, and pasting is a little bit weird inside of VI. Cut doesn't exist. You know, we normally think of cut and paste. We have to delete something. So that's where you get the D from. So D for delete. If you want to delete a whole line, it's 2 Ds, which is very handy for those SSH keys. Copy is called yank with a Y. And I've included the double D and double Y because that will do a whole line automatically. So if I want to yank an entire line or delete an entire line, DD or YY. And then I use paste, P. That's normal. The other thing that may happen when you're using VI is to undo a change. That's just you. The nice thing about that is if I want to undo something, it keeps a rolling buffer of 10 changes that have happened. So if I change something, I can just hit U over and over again. It'll take me back 10 changes. So you don't have to worry like, oh, this was three deletes ago. I've got to get it back. You just hit U and you're fine. So what I'll show here is I will do a DD that deleted that line, and then I will do a YY to yank that, and I will do a paste there, and it pasted those lines. Say I want to undo all of that, U. And you can see it's going back through my search and replaces as well. So I can just keep hitting U, and it will go back through my changes there. So you never have to worry about, oh, I've got to like delete the file or save it and redo it. Just hit U. Easy way out of it. So that is all I will have time for today. This is the most important stuff. If you take nothing else away from this presentation, this is the important stuff. I to enter the insert mode, escape to get out of it, right to save, Q to exit, arrow keys to navigate, 2 Ys to copy a line, 2 Ds to delete a line, X to delete a character, P to paste, :line to jump, and /string to search and to move. Those are the most handy commands. If you learn nothing else, you can do 95% of your editing in Vim with these commands right there. So hopefully you've enjoyed this. I enjoy teaching. I love VI, if you haven't been able to tell. I've got a lot of documentation. I've got very customized shells and things on how to make VI look. And once you get hooked onto it, once you figure out just how powerful it is with terminals and buffers, you might not ever go back. And I welcome that. So there is session surveys. We are offering a couple of different things. We have, if you're curious about more learning, if you've gone to Cisco U and you want to learn more about it, we have a Cisco U demo with Rigo over there. We're offering 75% of all certification testing. Unfortunately, VI, I have not been able to convince anybody to get it on the blueprint, but we have 75% off tests. And I'll be around here for the rest of the event if you have any questions about VI or anything specific around Linux or automation or anything like that. So thank you so much.